Not near the parking lot, not in a car. On a folding chair, in parking space 47, with a small table and a place card that had my name printed in the same elegant font as everyone else's. Sophia Martinez. Overflow seating. I could see the wedding reception through the floor-to-ceiling windows. 200 guests inside, laughing and dancing and celebrating my sister Isabella's perfect day. And me, outside in a parking space, like I was a car they needed to store somewhere out of sight. I should have left, should have driven away and never looked back. But then a man in a $3,000 suit appeared beside my pathetic folding chair. Distinguished, 60s, with the kind of face that belonged on a Fortune 500 cover. Sophia Martinez? That's me, the sister they keep in parking. He didn't smile. I'm William Whitmore, the groom's father, and I think we need to talk about why someone with your resume is sitting outside my son's wedding like forgotten luggage. I blinked. You know my resume? I know everything about everyone connected to my family, which is why I'm confused about why you're out here instead of inside where you could be useful to me. Useful? I have a problem, Sophia, a $60 million problem, and I think you might be the solution. He extended his hand. Come inside with me. Let's make your sister regret every decision she's made today. I should have asked more questions, should have been suspicious. Instead, I took his hand, and by the end of that night, I'd signed a contract that would destroy everything my sister thought she knew about power. This is the story of how I went from parking lot to penthouse, how I went from invisible to inevitable. It started 3 months before the wedding. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning in late February. I was in my apartment in Capitol Hill, the same modest one-bedroom I'd lived in for 3 years, making coffee before my morning client call. The envelope was cream-colored, heavy stock, with my name written in calligraphy that probably cost more per letter than my entire monthly coffee budget. Isabella Marie Martinez and Gregory Thomas Whitmore request the honor of your presence at their wedding ceremony. I stared at it for a long time, holding my coffee mug with both hands, feeling the weight of what this represented. My sister was getting married. My older sister, the golden child, the daughter who'd done everything right, was taking the next logical step in her perfect life trajectory. I should have been happy for her. Sisters are supposed to be happy for each other during milestone moments. But standing there in my small kitchen, looking at that expensive invitation, all I could think about was the last time we'd actually had a real conversation. Christmas, 2 years ago. She'd asked what I was doing with my life, and when I'd told her about my consulting work, she'd said, "That's nice, but when are you going to get a real career?" I'd been working in mergers and acquisitions for 4 years at that point, had an MBA from Stanford, spoke 3 languages fluently. But to Isabella, if it wasn't corporate law at a white shoe firm, it wasn't real. My phone rang. Mom, I almost didn't answer, but avoiding Linda Martinez only made things worse in the long run. Sophia, you got the invitation? No hello, no how are you, straight to business as always. Just opened it. Good. The wedding is June 15th at the Thornwood Estate. Very exclusive venue. Isabella's been planning this for months. It looks beautiful. She wants a small, intimate ceremony. Just close family and Gregory's important business associates. You understand? I understood perfectly. I was family by biology, but not by choice. I'd be invited because excluding me entirely would look bad, but I'd be made to feel my presence was an inconvenience. Of course, I said. I'm happy for her. Good. I'll send you details about accommodations. There's a Motel 6 about 15 minutes from the venue that should work for your budget. A Motel 6. While Isabella and her wedding party would undoubtedly be staying at the estate itself, in rooms that cost more per night than my weekly grocery budget. The message was clear. You're invited, but you're not really part of this. Thanks, Mom. And Sophia, try to dress appropriately. Nothing too flashy or attention-seeking. This is Isabella's day. She hung up before I could respond. I stood there holding my phone, feeling that familiar ache settle in my chest. The one that came from being perpetually second best, perpetually not quite good enough, perpetually the daughter they wished had turned out differently. I'd spent my whole life in Isabella's shadow. She was 4 years older, 4 years ahead in achieving every milestone our parents valued. Straight A's in high school while I got A-minuses, Harvard for undergrad while I went to USC, corporate law while I went into consulting, partner track at 30 while I was still building my client base. Nothing I did was ever quite as impressive as what Isabella had already accomplished, and our mother made sure I never forgot it. The thing about being the scapegoat in a family is that it doesn't happen overnight. There's no single moment where everyone sits down and decides you're the failure. It's 1,000 small cuts accumulated over years. The birthday parties where Isabella got the big celebration and I got a cake from Costco. The family dinners where Mom talked about Isabella's accomplishments for an hour and asked about my life for maybe 5 minutes. The Christmas cards that featured Isabella prominently and cropped me to the edge of the frame. I learned early that my value in this family was inversely proportional to Isabella's success. The better she did, the more my own achievements became cute or nice or, "That's great, honey. Now let's talk about your sister." I'd tried to break free, moved to Seattle after business school. Instead of staying in San Francisco where the family lived, built a career that had nothing to do with law or finance or any of the fields my parents respected, created a life that was mine, independent of their approval. But they still had this power over me, this ability to make me feel small with a single comment, invisible with a single gesture. And apparently, they were about to demonstrate that power spectacularly at Isabella's wedding. The next few weeks were a masterclass in being made to feel peripheral to your own sister's wedding. Isabella called once to confirm I was coming, but didn't ask if I wanted to be involved in planning or if I had any dietary restrictions or literally anything that would suggest she cared about my presence beyond checking a box. Mom sent logistics emails that positioned me as a problem to be solved. Sophia will need directions to the venue. Sophia should probably rent a car since she won't be with the family. Sophia's gift should be sent directly to the couple's home since there won't be room at the venue. I wasn't invited to the engagement party, wasn't asked to help with the bridal shower, wasn't included in the bachelorette weekend in Napa. I learned about all these events through Instagram posts where Isabella and her friends posed in matching outfits, holding champagne, looking like a magazine spread for privileged millennial celebrations. My sister had 5 bridesmaids, college friends, law school friends, Gregory's sister, not me. When I finally worked up the courage to ask about it, Isabella's response was practiced and dismissive. "The wedding party is set, Soph. These are people I see every day, people who've been part of my relationship with Gregory from the beginning. You understand, right? You're so far away in Seattle, it wouldn't be fair to ask you to do all the bridesmaid stuff." Translation: you're not important enough to be part of this. I threw myself into work. I was doing merger and acquisition consulting for mid-sized tech companies, helping them navigate buyouts and strategic partnerships. It was challenging work that required understanding both the technical side of business and the human psychology of negotiation. I was good at it, really good. But my parents didn't understand it. To them, consulting meant I didn't have a real job. Never mind that I was making 6 figures. Never mind that I'd helped facilitate deals worth tens of millions of dollars. It wasn't corporate law, so it didn't count. My father called exactly once in the months leading up to the wedding. He and Mom had divorced when I was 21, a cold, efficient separation where lawyers handled everything and nobody raised their voices. He'd remarried quickly, moved to Portland, essentially started a new life that included us only peripherally. "Your mother tells me you're coming to the wedding," he said, his tone suggesting this was mildly surprising. "Of course I'm coming. She's my sister." "Good, good. It'll mean a lot to Isabella." A pause. "You doing okay? Work going well?" "Yeah, Dad. Work is great. I just closed a deal for a client That's good. Listen, I can't talk long, but I wanted to make sure you knew the dress code is formal. Black tie, you'll need to get something appropriate. I know how to dress for a wedding. Of course you do. You know how your mother gets about appearances. He hung up shortly after, and I sat there wondering why I'd expected anything different. David Martinez had checked out of active parenting years ago. He showed up for major events, played his role adequately, and then disappeared back into his new life. I don't think he was deliberately cruel. He was just absent, and somehow that felt worse than active disapproval. I bought a dress for the wedding, nothing too expensive because I couldn't afford it, but something elegant. Navy blue with subtle beading on the bodice, knee length, appropriate for a formal evening wedding. I bought new shoes, got my hair trimmed, told myself I wasn't trying to impress anyone, that I just wanted to look nice for my sister's wedding. But I knew the truth. Some pathetic part of me still hoped that maybe, just maybe, if I looked put together enough, successful enough, appropriate enough, my family would see me differently, would treat me like I mattered. I should have known better. 2 weeks before the wedding, I received an email from Isabella's wedding coordinator. Subject line, final seating arrangements and logistics. The email was professional and detailed, outlining parking instructions, timeline for the day, and where to find my assigned seat. I skimmed through it, barely paying attention, until I reached the seating chart attachment. I opened it, scanned the layout. Main ceremony in the estate's garden pavilion, 200 guests arranged in elegant rows facing the water, reception in the grand ballroom, head table for the wedding party, priority seating near the front for immediate family and VIPs. I found my name, kept looking, must have missed it. Went back through the chart again, more carefully this time, and there it was, Sophia Martinez, not in the ceremony seating area at all, not in the pavilion or the garden or anywhere near the actual wedding. Overflow parking area, space 47, folding chair and small table to be provided. I stared at that document for a solid minute, certain I was misreading it. This had to be a mistake, some clerical error. My own sister wouldn't literally seat me in the parking lot for her wedding. I called the wedding coordinator. Hi, this is Sophia Martinez. I just received the seating chart, and I think there might be an error with my assignment. Oh, Ms. Martinez. Yes, let me pull up your details. Typing sounds. I show you an overflow parking area, space 47. Is there a problem? I'm the bride's sister. I'm not understanding why I'm seated outside in a parking space. A pause. Hold on, let me check my notes. More typing. Ah, yes. The bride specifically requested this arrangement. She noted that you'd be more comfortable in a quiet area, away from the main festivities. More comfortable. The bride specifically requested. Can you confirm that this is actually in a parking lot, like an actual parking space where cars usually go? It's the overflow parking area, yes. We're setting up a few seating arrangements there for guests who prefer a more low-key experience. You'll have a lovely view of the venue through the garden windows, and there will be a speaker system so you can hear the ceremony. I hung up, opened my laptop, drafted an email to Isabella, deleted it, started again, deleted it again. What was I supposed to say? Dear sister, I noticed you're seating me in the parking lot like I'm a car you need to store somewhere. Is this intentional, or did someone make a hilarious mistake? I knew it was intentional. This was Isabella's way of making perfectly clear where I stood in her life. Not just in the back row, not at a side table, outside, in a parking space, away from everyone who actually mattered. I should have declined to come, should have sent my regrets with some excuse about work or illness or literally anything that would let me keep some dignity. But I was tired, so tired of being the daughter who didn't count, the sister who got edited out, the family member who was invited out of obligation and treated like an inconvenience. Some masochistic part of me wanted to see just how far they'd take this, wanted to witness my own erasure so completely that I could finally, definitively stop hoping things would change. So I confirmed my attendance, booked my room at the Motel 6, bought a gift from their registry, an overpriced set of crystal wine glasses that probably cost more than my monthly car payment, and I prepared to sit in a parking space at my sister's wedding. The drive from Seattle to Thornwood Estate took about 2 hours. I left early on the wedding day, a Saturday in mid-June that was unseasonably perfect. Clear blue sky, temperature in the 70s, the kind of weather that made you believe in happy endings and new beginnings. The estate was stunning. A Gothic revival mansion on the shores of American Lake, all turrets and arched windows and manicured lawns that probably required a staff of 20 to maintain. Cars lined the long driveway, expensive vehicles that looked like they belonged in a luxury dealership advertisement, Mercedes, BMW, Tesla, the occasional Porsche. My 7-year-old Honda Civic looked profoundly out of place. I followed the signs for overflow parking, which led me around to the side of the estate, away from the main entrance where guests were arriving in their formal attire. The overflow area was exactly what it sounded like, a paved lot with painted parking spaces, currently empty except for a few service vehicles. And there, in space, 47, exactly as promised, a folding chair, a small, folding table, and a place card with my name in the same elegant calligraphy that had been on the invitation. Sophia Martinez, overflow seating. They'd even set out a small floral centerpiece, like they were trying to make this seem intentional and thoughtful rather than what it actually was, a humiliation. I sat down. From this angle, I could see into the main pavilion through large windows, could see guests arriving, finding their seats, chatting, and laughing, could see the wedding party assembling, bridesmaids in sage green dresses, groomsmen in navy suits, could see my mother in a champagne-colored gown, being escorted to her seat in the front row, accepting congratulations from everyone she passed, could see all of it, just not participate in any of it. A server appeared, looking confused. Young woman, probably early 20s, in the black and white uniform of the catering staff. Excuse me? Are you supposed to be here? Apparently. I showed her my place card. I'm the bride's sister. Her eyes widened. Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you might be lost. Can I get you anything? Water? Champagne? Champagne would be great. She disappeared and returned a few minutes later with a glass of champagne and what looked like genuine sympathy. For what it's worth, this is the weirdest seating arrangement I've ever seen, and I've worked like 50 weddings. Thanks. That's actually comforting in a horrible way. She left, and I sat there alone, sipping champagne in a parking space, watching my sister's wedding begin without me. The ceremony started at 5 o'clock exactly. I could hear it through speakers that had been set up, probably intended for this overflow area that I was apparently the only occupant of. Music swelled, guests stood, and Isabella appeared at the entrance to the pavilion. Even from my distant, obstructed view, I could see she looked beautiful. Her dress was a masterpiece of lace and silk, her veil trailing behind her like a cloud. Our father walked beside her, looking proud and distinguished in his tuxedo. I watched them walk down an aisle I couldn't really see, toward a ceremony I could only hear, and felt something fundamental break inside me. This was my sister. We'd shared a bedroom growing up. We'd fought over toys and clothes and bathroom time. We'd had inside jokes and secret languages and all the things sisters have, and she'd chosen to seat me in a parking lot rather than include me in her wedding. The officiant began speaking. I could hear the words, but they felt distant, meaningless. Generic wedding language about love and commitment and partnership. Isabella and Gregory exchanged vows I couldn't quite make out. Rings were exchanged. Somewhere in that pavilion, my sister was getting married, and I was listening to it through a speaker system like it was a radio broadcast. They were pronounced husband and wife. Applause erupted. The happy couple kissed and began their recessional back down the aisle, and I sat there, alone, in a parking space, wondering what the hell I was doing here. That's when he appeared. I didn't hear him approach, didn't notice him until he spoke, his voice carrying that particular quality of someone used to being listened to. This is possibly the most bizarre seating arrangement I've ever witnessed at a wedding. I looked up. The man standing beside my folding chair was probably in his early 60s, silver hair perfectly styled, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He had sharp blue eyes and the kind of presence that made you immediately aware he was important. "Tell me about it," I said. "I'm considering it modern performance art, postmodern commentary on family dynamics." He smiled slightly. "You must be the sister nobody talks about." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "I'm William Whitmore, the groom's father." He gestured toward the pavilion, where guests were beginning to move toward the cocktail hour. "My son told me the bride had chosen her wedding party very carefully. 5 bridesmaids, all people she's known for years. He mentioned they needed to make sure none of them were difficult or dramatic or would cause problems." "Sounds like Isabella." "He never mentioned she had a sister." William's gaze moved from me to the parking space, to the absurd little table with its place card and centerpiece, which I find interesting, given that she apparently went to significant effort to ensure you were present, but invisible. That's my role in this family, present but dismissible. He studied me with those sharp eyes, and I had the distinct impression he was seeing more than I wanted him to. "What's your name?" "Sophia Martinez." "And what do you do, Sophia Martinez, when you're not being seated in parking spaces at family weddings?" "I'm a consultant, mergers and acquisitions, primarily in the tech sector." His eyebrows rose. "Is that right?" "I have an MBA from Stanford, 5 years of M&A experience. I help mid-sized companies navigate buyouts, strategic partnerships, that sort of thing." "And your family thinks this warrants parking lot seating?" "My family thinks I work at Starbucks. They've never actually asked what I do." William was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "William Whitmore, CEO, Whitmore Holdings." "Whitmore Holdings," I said slowly. "That's the investment firm?" "Among other things, we have interests in real estate development, venture capital, and several tech acquisitions." He handed me the card. "My son works for me, has his whole life. Never worked anywhere else, never had to prove himself outside the family business. He's competent enough, but he lacks vision, lacks the hunger you get from having to build something yourself." "Okay." "I've been looking for someone to head our M&A division, someone who understands tech, who can navigate complex deals, who has the strategic thinking to see opportunities my current team misses." He paused. "Someone who's been underestimated enough to have something to prove." I stared at him. "Are you offering me a job? Right now? In a parking lot?" "I'm offering you an opportunity. My son is marrying into your family, which means our families are now connected, and I've learned that the most valuable people are often the ones everyone else overlooks." He glanced toward the pavilion. "I have a feeling you've been overlooked your entire life. What makes you think I'm qualified for something like that? Call it instinct. Call it 30 years of business experience recognizing talent when I see it." His smile turned sharp. "Or call it revenge. Your sister seats you in a parking lot, treats you like garbage, and you walk back in there with me as my chief strategy officer. Let's see how important you become when you control whether her new husband has a job next quarter." The words landed like a physical blow. This wasn't just a job offer. This was calculated, strategic revenge. And William Whitmore was offering to help me execute it. "Why would you do this?" "Because I'm tired of nepotism and mediocrity. Because I like people who've had to fight for everything they have. Because my son chose a woman who treats family like disposable assets, and I want him to learn that actions have consequences." He extended his hand. "So what do you say, Sophia? Want to walk back in there as someone who matters?" I should have said no, should have recognized this was manipulative and potentially destructive, should have stood up, declined politely, and driven back to Seattle with my dignity intact. But sitting there in that parking space, looking at the wedding reception I could see but wasn't invited to join, something cold and hard settled in my chest. What exactly would this position entail? Running the M&A division, identifying acquisition targets, negotiating deals, building partnerships, $250,000 base salary plus equity. You'd report directly to me with full authority over your team and your deals. $250,000, more than double what I was making as an independent consultant. And in exchange, you be brilliant, you prove that my instinct about you is correct, and yes, you let your family see that dismissing you was the biggest mistake they've ever made. I looked at the wedding reception, at my sister in her perfect dress, surrounded by her perfect friends, living her perfect life, at my mother holding court with her social circle, probably telling them all about how proud she was of Isabella's accomplishments, at the family that had spent my entire life making me feel less than. Then I looked at William Whitmore, at this stranger who'd found me in a parking lot and seen something my family never had. I need to think about it. Of course. But the offer expires at midnight tonight. After that, I'll find someone else. He started to walk away, then turned back. One more thing, Sophia. That dress you're wearing? It's perfect. Professional, elegant, understated, exactly what a chief strategy officer should wear. He smiled. Your sister's wedding party is wearing matching sage green dresses that cost $3,000 each and look like they came from a catalog. You look like someone who doesn't need a costume to be important. Then he walked away, disappearing toward the reception, leaving me alone with a business card and a decision that could change everything. I sat there as the sun began to set, as the golden hour light painted the estate in warm tones, as laughter and music drifted from the reception I wasn't part of. William Whitmore was offering me everything I'd never had. Respect, authority, a salary that would make my parents actually pay attention, a position that would force Isabella to see me as something other than her disappointing little sister. But taking it would mean stepping into something complicated and potentially ugly. It would mean weaponizing my career against my family. It would mean accepting help from someone who clearly had his own agenda. My phone buzzed. Text from my mother. Where are you? People are asking about you. People were asking, not because they cared, because my absence was noticeable and potentially embarrassing. I texted back, in my assigned seat. She didn't respond. Another text came through, this one from an unknown number. This is William. If you're ready to discuss the offer further, I'm at table 12 in the reception. No pressure, but the position doesn't stay open long. I looked at the business card in my hand, at the reception visible through the windows, at the parking space that had been chosen specifically to put me in my place, and I made a decision that would change everything. I stood up, smoothed down my dress, and walked toward the reception entrance, not as the dismissed sister, not as the family embarrassment, but as someone who'd just been handed the keys to power in a form my family would have to respect. The question wasn't whether I'd take the job. The question was how much I was willing to burn down to prove my worth. As I walked through those doors, I caught my reflection in the glass. Same dress, same face, same person I'd been an hour ago. But everything was different now. The invisible daughter was about to become impossible to ignore, and I was going to make them watch every second of my transformation. The reception was already in full swing when I walked through the entrance. The grand ballroom was a masterpiece of wedding excess. Crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across marble floors, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the lake, centerpieces that probably cost more than my monthly rent. A string quartet played softly in the corner, while servers circulated with champagne and appetizers that looked like tiny works of art. I stood in the doorway for a moment, scanning the room. 200 guests clustered in small groups, conversations humming with that particular energy that comes from open bars and celebration. Everyone looked elegant, expensive, perfectly placed in this tableau of upper-class success. Nobody noticed me. Why would they? I'd been seated in a parking lot specifically to ensure I remained invisible. I spotted table 12. William Whitmore sat with several other distinguished-looking individuals, board members probably, or business associates. He saw me immediately, his expression shifting from polite attention to something sharper. He stood, excusing himself from his companions, and met me halfway across the ballroom. "I wasn't sure you'd come in," he said quietly. "I wasn't sure either. But you're here now. Does that mean what I think it means?" I looked past him at the head table where Isabella and Gregory sat, surrounded by their wedding party. My sister looked radiant, holding Gregory's hand, laughing at something one of the bridesmaids said. She hadn't noticed me yet, hadn't even glanced toward the entrance to see if I'd arrived. "I want to hear more about the position," I said carefully. "The actual responsibilities, the expectations, what success would look like. I'm not going to accept a job just because I'm angry at my family." William smiled. "Good. That's exactly the right answer. Anyone who'd take a major career decision purely out of spite isn't someone I'd want running my M&A division." He gestured toward an empty corner of the ballroom, away from the main crowds. "Let's talk specifics." We found a quiet spot near one of the windows. William pulled out his phone and opened what looked like a detailed presentation. "Whitmore Holdings currently has interests in 12 different sectors," he began, his tone shifting to pure business. "Our M&A division has been underperforming for the last 18 months. We're missing opportunities, overpaying for acquisitions, and failing to identify strategic partnerships that would give us competitive advantages." Why is it underperforming? Because the current director is my nephew, who got the job because of his last name, not his qualifications. He's adequate for maintaining existing relationships but lacks the vision to grow the division. William swiped through several slides showing deal pipelines, valuations, and market analyses. "I need someone who can identify opportunities in emerging tech sectors, who understands how to structure complex deals, and who has the strategic thinking to see 3 moves ahead." I studied the data he was showing me. The pipeline was indeed weak, mostly small acquisitions in mature markets, nothing innovative or positioned for significant growth. "You're investing in the wrong companies," I said, pointing to a proposed acquisition of a legacy software firm. "This company looks stable on paper, but they're building on outdated infrastructure. In 3 years, they'll be obsolete." That's what I said. My nephew insisted it was a safe bet. Safe doesn't mean smart. You want growth, you need to look at companies solving problems that don't exist yet. I pulled out my own phone, opening my notes from a project I'd been working on. There's a Seattle-based startup developing AI-driven supply chain optimization. They're pre-Series B, undervalued because their current revenue model is service-based, but they're sitting on proprietary algorithms that could be licensed across multiple industries. William's eyes sharpened. "Keep talking." "They're called Chain-Link Dynamics. 3-year-old company, brilliant founding team, but they're cash-strapped and about to take a bad deal with a VC firm that will gut their equity. If Whitmore Holdings approach them with the right offer, acquisition with autonomy, resources to scale, and a pathway to enterprise licensing, you could turn a $5 million investment into a $100 million asset in 18 months. You've already researched this?" "I research everything. I have files on about 30 companies that are undervalued and strategically positioned for explosive growth. None of my current clients have the capital or vision to move on them." I met his gaze directly. "But you do." William was quiet for a long moment, studying me with those sharp blue eyes. Then he smiled, slow and satisfied. "You're hired." "I haven't accepted yet." "You will, because you know this is exactly what you've been preparing for your entire career, because you're tired of working for small clients who can't see the full scope of what you're capable of, and yes, because taking this job means your family will have to acknowledge that they were wrong about you." He wasn't wrong about any of it. "$250,000 base salary," I said, "plus equity. I want specifics on the equity structure. 2% of the M&A division, vesting over 4 years. If you hit performance targets in the first year, that increases to 3%. Performance targets: close 10 deals minimum, with a combined valuation increase of at least 40% over acquisition price within 18 months. I did the math quickly. Aggressive but achievable if I had full authority and adequate resources. I want final say on all acquisitions under $50 million, I countered. Anything over that, I present to you and the board, but I lead the negotiations. Agreed. And I want a team. I can't run an entire division alone. You'll inherit the current team, 3 analysts, 2 associates. If they're not up to your standards, you have authority to restructure. When would I start? Monday. I blinked. This Monday, as in 3 days from now? I don't waste time, Sophia. The division is bleeding opportunities. Every day we wait is money and market position we're losing. He extended his hand. So what do you say? Are you ready to show your family what they've been missing? I looked at his hand, at the deal he was offering, at the future that would unfold if I said yes. Then I looked across the ballroom at Isabella, still laughing with her wedding party, completely unaware that her little sister was about to become someone who could affect her husband's career trajectory. I shook William's hand. I'll need the offer in writing, full contract with all terms we discussed. You'll have it by tomorrow morning. I'll have my lawyers draw it up tonight. Then yes, I accept. His grip was firm, decisive. Welcome to Whitmore Holdings, Ms. Martinez. I have a feeling you're going to be the best decision I've made in years. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Now let's go make this interesting. Before I could ask what he meant, William was guiding me back toward table 12. The people seated there looked up with curiosity as we approached. 3 men and 2 women, all in their 50s or 60s, all with that particular look of people who were used to being important. Everyone, I'd like to introduce Sophia Martinez, William announced, his hand on my shoulder. She's just accepted the position of Chief Strategy Officer for our M&A division. She'll be starting Monday. The reaction was immediate. Surprise flickered across every face, followed quickly by assessment. These were people who made their living evaluating others, and I was being evaluated right now. Sophia, this is Richard Hendricks, our CFO. Margaret Torres, Head of Venture Capital. James Park, Real Estate Development. Linda Morrison, General Counsel. And David Wu, who runs our tech investments. I shook hands with each of them, meeting their eyes directly, projecting confidence I wasn't entirely sure I felt. Sophia has an interesting background, William continued. MBA from Stanford, 5 years in M&A consulting, with a focus on emerging tech sectors. She's exactly what our division needs to get back on track. Where have you been consulting? Margaret asked, her tone polite but probing. Independent practice. Mid-sized tech firms primarily, helping them navigate acquisitions and strategic partnerships. Any deals we'd know? I named 3. 2 had made tech news in the last year, and 1 had resulted in a successful IPO. Recognition dawned on Margaret's face. You handled the ByteFlow acquisition? That was brilliant structuring. Thank you. The key was recognizing that their value wasn't in their current product, but in their development pipeline. The conversation flowed naturally from there. These weren't people who cared about family connections or social status. They cared about competence, strategy, and whether I could deliver results. By the time a server came around with champagne, I'd already discussed 3 potential acquisition targets and fielded questions about market trends in AI and machine learning. It felt good. It felt right. This was what I was good at: strategic thinking, identifying opportunities, speaking the language of business and growth. And then my mother found me. I saw her approaching from across the ballroom, her expression shifting from confusion to something harder as she recognized me standing with William Whitmore and his executive team. She approached with measured steps, her champagne glass held like a weapon. Sophia, there you are. I was wondering where you'd gone. Her smile was tight, performative. "I hope you're not bothering Mr. Whitmore and his guests." "Not at all," William interjected smoothly. "Sophia and I have been discussing business. She's just accepted a position with Whitmore Holdings." My mother's smile froze. "I'm sorry, what?" "Chief Strategy Officer of our M&A division. She starts Monday." William's tone was pleasant, but there was steel underneath. "You must be very proud. It's quite an impressive position." Yes, of course. That's wonderful." My mother's eyes moved from William to me, trying to process this information. "Sophia, I didn't know you were looking for new employment." I wasn't. The opportunity presented itself rather unexpectedly. "In the parking lot specifically, now," William added, and I had to suppress a smile at the deliberate dig. I found Sophia in what I'm told was her assigned seating area. Seemed like an unusual place to put the bride's sister. A flush crept up my mother's neck. "There must have been some confusion with the seating arrangements. I'm sure Isabella didn't intend—" "Isabella specifically requested it," I said quietly. "According to the wedding coordinator." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. My mother opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Finally settled on, "Well, you're here now. That's what matters." "Indeed," William said. "And now that Sophia is part of the Whitmore Holdings family, I'm sure we'll all be seeing much more of each other. Family gatherings, corporate events, that sort of thing." The implication was clear. I wasn't just the disappointing daughter anymore. I was someone connected to Gregory's father's company. Someone who, by proximity to power, had suddenly become relevant. My mother's smile became even more strained. "How lovely. Well, I should get back to the other guests. Sophia, do try to enjoy yourself." She walked away, her posture rigid with barely concealed shock. Richard Hendricks chuckled once she was out of earshot. That was magnificently uncomfortable. "Family dynamics," William said with a shrug. "Always complicated. But that's part of why I hired Sophia. Anyone who can navigate that kind of dysfunction and still maintain professional composure has the psychological fortitude for high-stakes negotiations." The rest of the reception passed in a blur that felt surreal. I stayed with William's table, fielding questions from his executive team, discussing strategy and market analysis, slowly being absorbed into this new professional circle. People began approaching the table, other guests, business associates, people who'd ignored me completely when I was just the bride's sister, but who suddenly found me interesting now that I was attached to William Whitmore. I watched it happen in real time. The transformation from invisible to unavoidable, based on nothing more than a job title and association with power. Isabella noticed eventually. I saw her across the ballroom, saw the moment she recognized me sitting at her father-in-law's table, saw confusion cross her face. She said something to Gregory, who looked our way with alarm clearly visible on his features. They approached together, the happy couple, holding hands and wearing smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. "Sophia, I didn't realize you'd moved seats," Isabella said, her voice carefully pleasant. "I hope everything is okay with your original arrangement." "The parking lot was lovely," I replied smoothly. "Great view of the festivities, but William invited me to join his table, and we've been having the most fascinating conversation about business strategy." Gregory's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed hard. "Dad, I didn't know you two had met." "In the parking lot, actually," William said, his tone mild but pointed. "Where apparently your new sister-in-law was seated, I found the arrangement so unusual that I had to introduce myself." Isabella's perfect composure cracked slightly. "There must have been some miscommunication with the seating chart. I'm sure—" "No miscommunication," I interrupted gently. "The coordinator confirmed you specifically requested it, said I'd be more comfortable in a quiet area away from the main festivities." The silence was exquisite. Isabella and Gregory stood there, trapped between acknowledging what had happened and trying to maintain the facade of family harmony. Well, regardless, William said, standing and placing a hand on my shoulder, I'm grateful for the seating error. Otherwise, I might never have discovered that my new daughter-in-law's sister is exactly the person I've been looking for to run my M&A division. Your what? Isabella's voice went up slightly. Chief Strategy Officer. Sophia starts Monday. We're very excited to have her on the team. William smiled benevolently. I'm sure you're very proud of your sister's accomplishments, Isabella. She's quite impressive. Gregory looked like he might be sick. He understood the implications immediately. His wife had humiliated his new sister-in-law, who was now going to be working directly for his father in a senior leadership position. The family dynamics just became infinitely more complicated. That's wonderful, Isabella managed, her voice hollow. Congratulations, Sophia. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to working with the family. The emphasis on family wasn't subtle, and from Isabella's expression she caught it. They made excuses and retreated, and I watched them go with something that felt like satisfaction, but colder, sharper. You're enjoying this, William observed. Is that wrong? Not at all. Revenge is most satisfying when it's served with professional success. He raised his champagne glass. To new beginnings. I clinked my glass against his. To proving people wrong. The evening continued. Dinner was served, an elaborate multi-course meal that I barely tasted. Speeches were given, Gregory's best man, Isabella's maid of honor, our father doing his duty with a toast that managed to be both heartfelt and distant. My mother spoke as well, talking about Isabella's childhood, her accomplishments, her perfect wedding day. She didn't mention me, but this time I didn't care, because across the table, William Whitmore was discussing quarterly projections with his CFO and including me in the conversation like my input mattered. Because Margaret Torres was asking my opinion on a potential acquisition in the fintech space. Because David Wu wanted to connect me with his team to discuss AI investment opportunities. I was visible, not because of my family, but in spite of them. The wedding cake was cut, an elaborate confection of white chocolate and raspberry that was beautiful but technically flawed. The layers were too dense, the filling ratio was off. My professional brain automatically critiqued it, even as I smiled and applauded with everyone else. Dancing followed. The first dance, father-daughter dance, mother-son dance, all the traditional moments that looked perfect from the outside. Isabella and Gregory moved together like something from a magazine, the picture-perfect couple having their picture-perfect moment. But I noticed the tension in Isabella's shoulders, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes when she glanced toward table 12, the way Gregory's father watching from our table instead of engaging with the celebration. I'd disrupted the narrative. The wedding was supposed to be about Isabella's triumph, her perfect life reaching its logical conclusion. Instead, it became the night her dismissed sister emerged as someone who couldn't be ignored. William left around 9, citing an early morning. Before he went, he shook my hand formally. I'll have contracts to you by tomorrow afternoon. Read them carefully. Ask questions if needed. I want you fully informed before you sign anything. Thank you for everything. Don't thank me yet. This job is going to be demanding. I have high expectations. Good. So do I. He smiled. Monday morning, 8 a.m., Whitmore Holdings headquarters, downtown Seattle. Ask for Jennifer at reception. She'll have your credentials ready. I'll be there. After he left, the energy at the table shifted. Without William's presence, the other executives were more relaxed, more candid. They asked me questions about my background, my approach to M&A, my thoughts on current market trends. It was Richard, the CFO, who finally voiced what they were all thinking. You know this is going to be complicated, right? Working for your brother-in-law's father? I know. Gregory is adequate at his job, but he's comfortable, never had to fight for anything, never had to prove himself outside the family business. William's been frustrated with him for years. Is that why he hired me? Partly, Margaret interjected. But William doesn't make hiring decisions based solely on family drama. If he didn't think you were genuinely qualified, you wouldn't have been offered the position. He's too strategic for that. The question is, David said carefully, can you handle it? The professional pressure and the family complications? I thought about sitting in that parking lot, about years of being dismissed, overlooked, treated as less than, about the careful distance my family had always maintained, the way they'd made me feel like my accomplishments didn't count. I can handle it. Linda, the general counsel, leaned forward. One piece of advice, if you'll take it. Document everything, every decision, every deal, every interaction with family members in a professional context. Cover your ass, because if this goes sideways, you'll need proof that everything you did was above board. That's cheerful. That's realistic. You're walking into a situation that's professionally promising, but personally messy. Be brilliant at your job, but protect yourself. I nodded, appreciating the candor. These were people who understood complexity, who'd navigated their own difficult situations. They weren't trying to discourage me. They were trying to help me succeed. The reception wound down around 11. Guests began departing, calling for cars and Ubers, gathering coats and saying goodbyes. Isabella and Gregory were still holding court, accepting congratulations and well wishes, playing their roles perfectly. I slipped out quietly, not bothering with goodbyes. Nobody would miss me anyway. The parking lot was dark now, illuminated only by scattered lights along the pathways. My little folding chair and table were still there in space 47, looking pathetic and absurd. I paused beside them for a moment, looking at the place card with my name. This was supposed to be where I stayed, where Isabella wanted me, invisible, unimportant, easily forgotten. Instead, it became the place where everything changed. I got in my Honda Civic and drove back to my Motel 6, my head spinning with everything that had happened. A wedding I'd been dreading had somehow transformed into the launching point for the biggest career opportunity of my life. My phone buzzed as I pulled into the motel parking lot. Text from an unknown number, contract sent to your email, review at your leisure, looking forward to Monday. William. I sat in my car and opened my email on my phone. The contract was there, professionally formatted, every term we'd discussed spelled out in clear legal language. Chief Strategy Officer, $250,000 base, 2% equity, full authority over the M&A division. It was real. This was actually happening. Another text came through, this one from Isabella. We need to talk. I stared at those 4 words. 3 hours ago, my sister didn't think I warranted a seat. Inside her wedding. Now she needed to talk. I didn't respond. Let her wait. Let her wonder. I walked into my budget motel room, hung up my dress carefully, and sat on the edge of the bed. Tomorrow, I'd drive back to Seattle. Tomorrow, I'd read through the contract thoroughly, maybe have a lawyer friend review it. Tomorrow, I'd start planning my transition from independent consultant to chief strategy officer. But tonight, I let myself sit with the enormity of what had happened. I'd gone to that wedding expecting humiliation, expected to be invisible, dismissed, treated like I didn't matter. And I had been, seated in a parking lot like something to be stored away and forgotten. But from that humiliation came opportunity. From being overlooked came the chance to be undeniable. William Whitmore had found me in that parking lot and seen something my family never had. Talent, strategic thinking, the hunger that comes from having to prove yourself every single day of your life. And he'd given me the tools to make my family see it too. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Isabella. Sophia, please, we should talk about this. I turned my phone face down and closed my eyes. She'd have time to talk, all the time in the world. Because starting Monday, I wasn't just her sister anymore. I was the person who could influence her husband's career trajectory. The person who had her father-in-law's ear and confidence. The person who'd gone from parking lot to power in the span of a single evening. The invisible daughter had become impossible to ignore, and I was going to make them watch every second of what came next. 6 months later, everything had changed. I stood in the executive conference room of Whitmore Holdings, presenting my quarterly report to the board. Behind me, slides showed the results of my first 6 months as Chief Strategy Officer. 10 acquisitions closed, combined portfolio value increase of 47%, 3 strategic partnerships that positioned us as leaders in AI-driven logistics and supply chain optimization. Chain-Link Dynamics, the company I'd identified in that parking lot conversation with William, had just closed a licensing deal worth $80 million. My 2% equity stake had already vested to 3% based on performance. I was making more money than I'd ever imagined, working with brilliant people on deals that actually mattered. And my family? They were learning what it meant to dismiss someone who turned out to be valuable. Isabella called every week now, wanted to reconnect, to rebuild our relationship, to make sure there were no hard feelings. I was polite, but distant, busy with work. Maybe we could get coffee sometime, never a firm commitment. My mother had started introducing me at social events. This is my daughter, Sophia. She's Chief Strategy Officer at Whitmore Holdings. Very impressive position. Said with pride now, as if she'd always supported my career choices. Gregory walked on, eggshells around me at family gatherings. His position at Whitmore Holdings was secure, but he understood the power dynamics had shifted. His father consulted me on major decisions. My recommendations carried weight. If I ever decided Gregory was underperforming, it would matter. I didn't abuse that power, didn't need to. Just having it was enough. William had been right. The best revenge wasn't destruction. It was success so undeniable that the people who dismissed you had no choice but to acknowledge what they'd lost when they decided you didn't matter. I kept that place card from the wedding. Sophia Martinez, overflow seating. It sat on my desk at Whitmore Holdings, a reminder of where I'd started and how far I'd come. Sometimes late at night in my new apartment, upgraded significantly from my Capitol Hill studio, I thought about that moment in the parking lot, the choice I'd made, the hand I'd shaken. William Whitmore had offered me revenge, wrapped in opportunity. I'd taken it. And in doing so, I discovered something important. I didn't need my family's approval to know my worth. I didn't need them to validate my choices or celebrate my accomplishments. I just needed to be excellent at what I did. The rest would follow. The parking lot was supposed to keep me invisible. Instead, it became the place where I finally learned to see myself clearly. And once I could see my own worth, once I stopped waiting for my family to validate it, I became unstoppable. Isabella's wedding was supposed to be the culmination of her perfect life. Instead, it became the beginning of mine. And every time I walked into that executive conference room, every time I closed a deal that changed the company's trajectory, every time William looked at me with that expression that said, "I knew you could do this," I remembered. I remembered sitting on a folding chair in parking space 47. I remembered being treated like I didn't matter. And I remembered the moment I decided I didn't need them to see me. I just needed to see myself. The invisible daughter didn't stay invisible. She became the most important person in the room. And it all started in a parking lot with a stranger who saw what my family never could. Sometimes the best things in life come from the worst moments. Sometimes being overlooked is the greatest gift you can receive, because it teaches you that your value isn't determined by people who can't see it. It's determined by you. And once you know your worth, no one can take it away, not even family, especially not family.